Hey everyone, it's Ivan, KPatcher.com, out here today to tell you about Finnish Brutality, Day 1. If you're unfamiliar with Finnish Brutality, pretty amazing. It is a brutality match over in Finland. So when I say brutality, think basically two-gun with a bunch of physical component to it. And I will say the one over in Finland, like Finnish Brutality, it is, here's the thing. If you did not know that the tactical games was CrossFit and shooting low probability targets, largely geometric shapes printed out on paper, if I said, hey, I'm gonna go do the tactical games, and you didn't know that that's what it was, you'd be like, man, you're going to do Finnish Brutality. It was pretty awesome. The competition is actually put on by Varustelika, a may or may not be pronouncing that right, but a Finnish company, started initially as, I want to say, like a surplus store, and then kind of morphed into their own entire brand also, with a outdoor line as well as a tactical line. Really incredible people, just, yeah, awesome company. So I ended up initially going over there, meeting up with them in Helsinki, and basically got kitted out with all of their gear. I essentially showed up with street clothes and my camera, but got totally kitted out there, and then we drove north, I don't know, about 2 hours or so to Lopy. There's a range up there, and really cool facility. Basically settled in and got ready. Did a little bit of filming that first day we were up there, which was, I guess, Friday, which was the staff match. And yeah, got ready for my competition the following day. My squad started off day 1 on stage 1 at Casa Off-Road. So a staple of kind of all the brutality matches is a Casa drill, where you essentially have a kettlebell. You'll throw the kettlebell, whether it's like linear or lateral, whatever it is. Well, I guess it's always kind of linear, whether it's downrange or side to side. And wherever it lands, you'll get a hit or more than one hit, throw it again. And each marker you end up passing as far as the distance ends up as a reduction of your time, overall time. So this one, it was pretty cool. In part, cool props. Like, you literally start in the back of an armored personnel carrier, and on the buzzer, get out, go, and just get after it. Start basically working through this Casa drill, throwing this thing down there, and eventually getting your hits. Granted, this, unlike any other one I've done, there's basically the whole thing is littered with obstacles. So not only do you want to make sure your kettlebell doesn't hit stuff, bounce out, whatever it may be, but in addition to that, make sure you actually have a clear firing lane. There were definitely people skipping rounds into some of the barrels, like obstacles, stuff like that, which consequently meant you're missing downrange and basically shooting through that. And once you make it all the way down, basically get that kettlebell, get all the way back, and get up into the APC, climb up in that turret, get your hits to finish the stage. Next stage was watch your step. Pretty straightforward as far as shooting off of different obstacles, basically these tank traps, and making your way down to the sniper's hide. And you had 1 round, basically get your hit, hopefully, and then shoot your way back. But, watch your step. So they're basically these painted clay pigeons which simulated mines. And so you're trying to go as fast as you can, trying to, get a good supported position, move quick, get your hits, all these things, and also watch your step. Definitely watch some people step on those, which is immediate, like, you're dead. You're done with the stage. 0. So pretty high risk as far as losing that situational awareness, but that stage was a ton of fun. portion prior to the actual like shooting stage, which was basically just for bonus, was get a ride in the back of this pretty epic vehicle and shoot at a number of targets while on the move. So much fun. Next stage was hardcore recando. I'm pretty sure Yari had something to do with this. Yari being owner of Brutality and event coordinator because of his time in that unit in the Defense Force, where you're carrying like a 90-pound pack because you're going for a long time, sustaining yourself off of your back. And something I do appreciate about Finnish Brutality, the way it's set up, is reminiscent of the military, where there's a task that has to happen. So it doesn't matter if you're 7 foot or 4'11", like 110 pounds, like the task still needs to get done. So to that end, this one you had a 90-pound pack on top of whatever other gear you had, and you had to make it work. Pretty simple on its face, basically shooting through VTAC barricade and then making it up over pretty small obstacle, really just a stack of pallets, and shooting from the other barricade. And then basically working your way back and forth. But yeah, that was pretty legit. Next stage was medic with an exclamation mark. Really, really awesome stage on a couple different levels, but initially starts with some shooting, then you have a medical problem that you need to get taken care of. And the way they had it set up was so well done, basically with role players and someone working a pump. So you actually have like arterial bleeding, and you had to go grab the tourniquet off their kit and get that thing on there. And again, you actually have a metric. So you put the tourniquet on until the bleeding stops. And if you don't put it on right, then you'll be there until you put it on right. Like actually secure it on there and crank that thing down tight. And the way they did it was awesome. And then of course, after that, you have some more shooting. That was honestly one of the coolest stages I've ever shot in any competition. And I remember talking to people about it, actually, speaking of the tactical games, and the problem with tourniquet application is largely what is the metric, especially if you're putting it on yourself or even if you're putting it on someone else. Like, did you put it on tight enough? And who knows, because how do you measure that versus here actually having a measurable metric, as in, did you stop the blood flow? And it's a consistent metric that's used for everyone in the competition. And that was honestly just really cool. Last stage of the day, last shooting stage of the day, was called Light It Up. And pretty fun. Basically this target array, these different targets, and they were lit, illuminated with these different colored lights. The way it worked, computer controlled, and they would only light up for certain amounts of time, and you could only shoot them from their respective positions. It kind of reminiscent of, I want to say, the game Simon, where you have that circle with the 4 different lights and like little paddles, and basically goes through different patterns. Kind of that same thing. So you had to ideally recognize which ones were coming on in what order, because there were limited visibility, and basically work on shooting through. Definitely kind of a head game there, but a lot of fun on that stage. As I said, last shooting stage of the day. I would be remiss if I did not talk about Breacher Division. So the way the competition works, number of different divisions, whether it is armored, TST, like think military loadout, where you actually have plate carrier with ballistic plates and essentially a weight requirement for all of your gear. At least 1 liter of water, fixed blade at least 4 inches long, med kit, 3 full rifle mags, 2 full pistol mags, beginning of every stage, all that stuff. And then there's like Irons Division, I think an Open Division, might be one more in there. But then they had Breacher Division. So if you were shooting in I think everyone was pretty much in armor division. Then breacher was, think of it as an add-on, which for all intents and purposes was a whole nother competition, like another 10 stages over the course of those 2 days. So the way it worked is you'd go shoot your stage. By way of example, we went, shot that first stage of the day, and then rather than having an hour downtime before your next stage, it was time to go to your breacher challenge over in the Field of Glory. And it was some sort of physical component. I want to say the first one on day 1, after we shot stage 1, went over and had the fighting hole challenge. During that challenge, you basically had to dig a fighting hole, foxhole, as deep as you can, basically measured for volume. So they ended up giving you, I think, a 10-minute time period with an e-tool to dig that thing down as much as you could. And then eventually they ended up measuring it, both for width and then depth, and figuring out your volume from there. But yeah, reminiscent of the military. Then after our second shooting stage was our second breacher stage of the day. And I want to say that one was push-ups, where literally I think you had like 3 minutes to knock out as many push-ups as you can. Again, in gear. And one thing I do appreciate is they actually maintained a standard. It wasn't like little T-Rex push-ups, like basically all the way down to your plate carrier hit, all the way up to your arms locked out. And they gave people no reps if they weren't doing it right, which good on them. And yeah, just grind them out. I think for my own part, I think I got maybe like 60. I definitely approached it like 3 minutes of push-ups, because that's one of those with most any exercise where if you go fast and hard and you get to fatigue, failure, like it's not coming back. So I just paced myself and ground through it. One of the other breacher stages was sandbags. Basically, you had to fill up these sandbags from a big pile of dirt. And yeah, again, reminiscent of time in the military, but go over there with those e-tools and get them filled. And again, if you didn't do a good job, they would make you fill them up, like actually top them off. And then of course, why waste sandbags? Eventually you get to use those later as well. Another one of the events was paratrooper burpees. Had never done these before. Apparently in their airborne school, they do paratrooper burpees, which kind of a long drawn out movement, definitely a little more complicated than a regular burpee. And yeah, I think again, another 3 minutes, if not like 5 minutes of just grinding these things out. So for me, started working through them, was not trying to win that event, and eventually I just turned it into like, let's get some good reps. And so working on standing back to my feet, like back to a fighting position, and yeah, just grind them out. And then I think our last breacher stage on day 1, I'll be honest, these might be totally out of order. They all blur together out there on the Field of Glory, but was window entry. Idea being you are basically making entry into a window. So you need to get over this obstacle, like onto the other side of, think a window frame. And so there's essentially a fence and some barriers in between where you and the other people are competing. Basically you got to get over as many times, again, I think like a 3-minute window, something like that, and just grind it out. Very quickly I realized, I'm like, rather than jumping up and over this thing, even though it looks really cool, I'm gonna pretty much throw my leg and just climb over this thing. Economy of motion. And that's exactly what I did, just ground it out. And that right there wraps up day 1 of Finnish Brutality. Amazing time out there. Initially working through those 5 shooting stages, really cool stage design, tons of fun. And then in between each one, essentially a whole nother competition, going out there to the Field of Glory for breacher division. And by the end of it, definitely pretty worn out. Spent some time in the sauna that night, and yeah, ended up crashing out so that I could wake up and do it all again. Check out day 2, where I go over all of those stages, both shooting stages as well as breacher division again. And yeah, just a really cool time out there. But as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadge.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.